It looks good. You're
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, I can see your
Okay.
dog back there. So, welcome everybody, and I'm sure that the good folks here, Kevin and Catherine, will be sharing this link so we can get it all over social media. And I think Kevin's got some stories he's going to share with us,
Yeah.
and I lined up some stuff too. You know what feral kids are?
Yes, I do.
So I got a list of feral kids we're going to talk about with pictures, and I've got a list of your favorite subject, haunted dolls.
Oh,
All
okay.
right. Some of them I know you've heard of, others maybe not. We'll find out.
Oh.
So everybody knows who I am, and I assume you know who my haunted dolls is right there,
Uh-huh.
Mister Kevin the Cane, and he is the author of Booth, that book right there.
Boo.
And I know he wants to talk about it. It's magic.
Magic.
So
Crimson the Blood.
tell them about your book.
Crimson the Blood painting, the novel based on an actual haunted painting. In fact, that one right there on the cover uh, is in my collection here. That came from Salem, Massachusetts, and is haunted by a woman named Crimson. And the story was so creepy, and it came from Salem, the home of witches and witchcraft, urban legend, urban legends of witchery and everything up there. So it actually hung in the home of a practicing witch, and it dates back to the just after the Civil War. So it's an old painting, and it was just such a creepy story. I decided I got to write a book about this. So this is a fictional novel based on the actual story and actual painting. And it's available on myhauntedolls.com autographed, or you can get it anywhere else in paperback at Amazon, Books A Million, or ebook, or even audiobook performed by actress Lynn Thomas, who does a fantastic job. So be sure to check those out. myhauntedolls.com.
Now, you've also got 10 other books out there that they
Yes,
can
I
find
do.
on your website.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are, or at least I am. Kevin's not poor. I'm poor. Help out some poor, starving. I know we got a little excess weight, but we had to store up for the winter.
Even though
Anyway,
it's fun.
bottom line is that help us out. Buy some books, and if you order from us directly, we make better profit. If you go to Amazon, they really take a lot of our money. So, and plus, if you get from Amazon, you're not going to get it autographed right away.
Yeah.
So think about those things. Now, the last 2 weeks, we had a couple of guests. We had the bone thrower, casting bones girl, and then we had Z, Madam Z out of Texas. Now, did the girl that threw the bone throwing, she did that for Patty?
Yes.
So afterwards, you've had a couple of weeks to kind of think about it. At the end of it all, what do you feel about that reading?
Well, I thought it was pretty good. I don't know. I had never really. I heard a little bit about bone throwing before then, but I'd never really studied up on it. And she hit a few interesting things there. So, but I did do a follow-up video. One of the things that she talked about during that reading was Patty had something to share with the world, and in the next spirit box session, and to do a candle and a gift, to help stir that up, which I burnt the candle, left the gift for a couple of days, and then went and buried it, and then did this spirit box session this last weekend, which is out there on my YouTube, and asked Patty what does she want to share with the world, and she just simply said, "Enjoy it." Said it twice.
Maybe kind of hard to do right now, but
yeah,
do the best we can. Well, so you actually followed through the directions she gave you.
Yeah.
And you stepped all the way through that. Do you think that made a difference in what you did? Do you feel anything or?
I didn't really feel a difference. I mean, I guess Patty appreciated the attention and the thought. I don't know if it, but as far as feelings, I mean, I still feel the same as always with the dolls. And she was never, I messed up during that video a few weeks back. We were talking about her being in storage, and I forgot till almost the end. She was not in storage. I kept her in the house.
You corrected yourself.
Leg was broke, so I didn't want it to break any worse. It's cracked. It's not broken. So I said I better keep her out of storage. And then plus there were a few certain dolls I kept out that I knew wouldn't do well in storage. But I think those dolls were lonely without that whole entire collection of spirit family around them, being separated, and now they're all back together and happy. And but yeah, I haven't felt anything. I mean, everybody feels happy here. I haven't felt anything different.
Nothing negative.
Yeah, nothing negative.
So you also introduced your new doll, Tim.
Yeah, I have not done a spirit box with him yet, but I do.
Did one of the girls do a reading on Tim?
Yeah, last week the tarot card reading,
okay,
which was just basically a little bit more in depth about his story. He didn't say anything. It was more of his story.
You got Tim from Cherie.
Yes, I did.
And Cherie saw that video from last week, and she made a comment that she thought it was accurate.
Oh, okay. I didn't see her comments. I didn't know.
Yeah, because you shared it, or I shared. Somebody shared it on her webpage, and she watched it, and she was amazed.
Yes, she was very amazed by it. She said it was very, very accurate to what she had gotten off of Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounded accurate to me.
So okay. Here we can have now what I think is kind of obvious here. Did your new computer come in?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not freezing anymore.
So if you don't know it, he's got a green screen set up behind him. That's not him sitting in front of his dolls. He's got that green screen, and it looks like he's in front of his doll. But your hat up there is kind of going into
Kevin, it looks like you don't have a top of your head sometimes.
He blew his top.
Well,
all right.
Flashing now. Look at that. Ooh.
And that would make a neat hat. Bend down again, because now the brim of your hat is all dolls.
Oh, look at that! Yeah, there's the island of the dolls there, and
all right. So I've got lined up about 20 stories. About half of them are haunted dolls. Some of the haunted dolls I'm sure that people are aware of, and some you may not be aware of. And then about feral kids, going back in time, and there's a list of these feral kids, and I'm going to share those stories as well. So what have you got for us on your end?
I've got a list of most popular urban legends from each state.
From each state?
From each state.
So you got 52.
Yeah, should be. Unless they didn't add in the territories there. I don't know.
Puerto Rico in there?
I know Alabama's at the top of the list.
There you go. Well, why don't, since you're going to have more than I, so why don't you go ahead and open up?
Okay, I can do that.
I'll try not to interrupt you.
Okay. We'll see how long that lasts. Yeah, there's my picture.
I like that backdrop. That looks cool.
Yeah, that's a picture of my collection. Just a part of my collection. That's one wall and 2 bookcases of it. There's more around that room and in my bedroom. But without further ado, I'll get started with this. The creepiest urban legends in every state. And it starts off with, well, let me do this little intro paragraph. I like this. America is a country rich in folklore, a place where cautionary tales have always been mixed into the pot and sprinkled into our collective nightmares. Yet some of our nation's eeriest and most persistent stories, whether because they're rooted in community lore or used as means to synthesize local tragedy, don't travel far. Never fear, or actually, please do fear. We've tracked down the creepiest urban legends in all 50 states. Those are just the 50 original states. And the macabre bunch of stories is certain to freak you out no matter where you live. So in Alabama, the top urban legend, guess what? We've covered this a few times. Dead Children's Playground. Why it's creepy? This eerie playground adjacent to Maple Hill, Huntsville's oldest cemetery, doesn't just have an eerie nickname for fun. The playground was presumably designed to entertain kids while their parents visited the graves of loved ones. Legend has it, though, that the spirits of children who've been buried in the cemetery since the first grave was dug there in 1822 come out to play at night. The living have observed orbs of light going down the slide, seen swings moving on their own, and even heard giggling. Creepier still, some say the spirits include victims of a rash of child murders that happened in the 1960s when bodies were rumored to have been found in the area that now houses the playground. The playground itself wasn't open until 1985, so you can imagine how much pent-up energy the tiny spirits had after 163 years without a slide. In 2007, the city tried to raise the park to make more room for graves and removed the slides and swings overnight. After public outcry, it was replaced with more modern equipment, making it slightly less creepy to look at, and also probably resulting in some happier ghosts. All right, moving on to Alaska. We have the Alaska Triangle. If you haven't heard of this one I didn't really know about until a couple of years ago. Encompassing an area ranging from near Juneau in the southeast to the northern Barrow region to the western metropolis of Anchorage, Alaska's answer to the Bermuda Triangle is comprised some of the most barren wilderness in the U.S., and it apparently craves souls. More than 20,000 people have gone missing without a trace in the area during the past half-century alone. Are they being consumed by mythological beings like the beastly Quileute or the ghoulish kidnapper Qualapalik, lost on extreme heights, or simply vanishing into a dark vortex? Nobody knows, though it's not for lack of trying. When the government lost House Majority Leader Hale Boggs' Cessna to the Triangle in 1972, a massive search turned up tons of conspiracy theories, but no bodies. The area has been associated with evil spirits, and Tlingit lore for centuries attributed trickster demons for luring people to an icy death. Others believe the area exists amid an electromagnetically influenced vile vortex. Still others think it's a Darwinian result of explorers taking on nature. Regardless, the area continues to claim people, and underneath that mass blanket of snow and rock likely lies one of the largest and best preserved mass graves in the world. Ooh. And then, here comes Kelsey back. Uh-oh.
You got two of them out of the way. Geez.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you just go ahead. I didn't know if you wanted to. I'll just do two each, and then
mine are short. But I'm going to introduce, first of all, we're going to talk about kids. Not kids, dolls. Sorry.
Oh, dolls.
And some grown find comfort in dolls. They're fun and delightful companions during playtime. And even as adults, we find comfort in dolls. As we grow older, however, those once cherished playthings transform sometimes into pure nightmare fuel. The vacant eyes and frozen grins are scary enough, but what happens when a doll stirs in the night and starts moving around on its own? The haunted dolls that I'll list now are best known for haunting dreams, scurrying through homes, and bringing misfortune upon anyone unlucky enough to come in contact with them. So we're going to start right now with one that I'm sure you're all familiar with. Oh, no, that's not her. Okay. Everybody knows who this doll is, right? Oh, yeah. This is not an unusual one. Annabelle is a Raggedy Ann doll, now imprisoned in a special glass case in a collection made famous by the paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. And Annabelle is so famous that she was the inspiration for a movie and the sequel to the movie. In the movie, Annabelle is played by a much creepier looking doll. In real life, Annabelle has the same sweet face of a Raggedy Ann. Her story, however, is not sweet at all. According to the Warrens, Annabelle was given to a young nursing student named Donna by her mother in 1970. The doll would move around the apartment when Donna and her roommate Angie weren't home. The young women were willing to put up with a doll that moved around on her own, but things soon got scarier. The doll left notes asking for help. Then she attacked Angie's boyfriend. When the young women found blood on the doll's dress, that was it. They called in a psychic. The doll was possessed by the spirit of a girl named Annabelle. The girl's next call was to the Warrens, who took Annabelle out of their hands, putting her in a glass case with a written warning to the unsuspecting, positively do not open. Now I'm going to continue on before I turn this back over to Mr. with another well-known doll. I'm going to get into some not so well-known dolls. This is Robert the doll. And Robert was an inspiration for the terrifying Chucky doll of Child's Play. I wasn't aware of that series. Robert is a life-size doll, which is rather unusual in itself. It was reportedly made by the famous Steiff Toy Company in Germany. It was given to the Florida artist Robert Eugene Otto as a birthday present when he was a child in 1904. His grandfather had bought it while on a trip to Germany. The doll wears a sailor suit, was probably a childhood outfit of the real Gene. Another story has it that the doll was a gift from a malicious voodoo practicing maid as revenge for some unknown wrongdoing by the family. Stories of the doll's odd behavior early, with reports of the doll changing expressions and moving around the house on its own. One theory says that Gene himself unleashed powers by blaming his childhood misdeeds on the life-size doll who wore his clothes and had his name. Those who lived in the house reported hearing Gene talking to Robert. Perhaps not that unusual, but Robert would talk back. As the years went on, Robert's deeds turned darker. The doll is blamed for many misfortunes, including collapse, broken bones, and car accidents. Robert remained in the Otto family home in Key West, Florida, throughout Gene's entire life and even after his death. The house passed to new owners who kept the living doll for 20 years. Now Robert resides in a museum in Key West, where brave tourists can now visit him. Would you like to go see Robert the doll?
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Robert the doll.
All right. Now we're going to turn things back over to Mr. Kevin the Haunted Doll King for more stories from each state of the great nation of the United States of America.
Yes, the favorite urban legends from each and every state. And now we get to Arizona. Skinwalkers. It's easy to feel uneasy while driving through the desolate desert roads of Arizona, especially at night, and particularly so when you hear a short burst of taps on your window while cruising at 60 miles per hour and turn to see the shape-shifting, mutilated, half-human creature responsible for the high-speed interruption. Relax, it's only trying to rip the flesh off your bones. This legend is so ingrained in Arizona culture that when a Navajo woman was found brutally murdered in Flagstaff, the accused killer's defense in court was that the attack could have only been perpetrated by a skinwalker. There's even a defined and well-documented portion of the state known as Skinwalker Ranch, where you are most likely to see one of the creatures. Not that you'd actually want to, but you can. The Skinwalkers, like so many ancient American urban legends, have roots in Native American folklore. While it's fairly hard to gather specific details, speaking of potentially sinister legends of seriously taboo in Navajo culture, it is understood that what non-Navajos refer to as skinwalkers are witch doctors who have become an evil reflection of everything the Navajo Nation values. Basically, they are men who've transformed into malevolent, murderous creatures that have no qualms using their spiritual powers to kill. Navajo medicine men are trained to learn both good and evil aspects of their power, and skinwalkers are those who have turned to the dark side. It's all very Star Wars, and frankly, still terrifying. And now we move to the country in Arkansas, where we have the Dog Boy.
The what?
The name sounds kind of goofy, or actually even kind of like goofy. But if you find yourself at 65 Mulberry Street in the middle of the minuscule Arkansas town of Quitman, you won't laugh if you see the hulking outline of a 300-pound, half-man, half-beast, complete with glowing animal eyes, glaring out of the windows. Walk quickly, as he has best been known to chase people down his street, biting at their heels. Kind of like a dog, actually. This is the rare urban legend where the story behind the story ends up being even creepier than the folklore. Gerald Bettis, the only son of the Bettis family of 65 Mulberry, was always a problem child, but not in the cute Junior Healy kind of way like in the movie. Bettis would collect and torture animals, hence the Dog Boy moniker, before turning his sociopathic focus to his elderly parents, allegedly imprisoning them in their own home and potentially even murdering his father. Eventually, Bettis would be imprisoned for growing marijuana on his back porch and would die in a state penitentiary in 1988 of a drug overdose. It is his spirit, the people say, that is the dog man who roams and still attacks. And I can move on to California, or no, here comes back Kelsey.
No, that's fine. I just dropped in and say, continue on. You got more to cover than I do.
Oh, you want me to keep going?
Yeah, do two more, and then I'll jump back in.
Okay. So we have California.
And by the way, folks, this is Kevin Kane. He's the good guy. He's got on a white hat. I'm the bad guy. MyHauntedDolls.com. And, I keep pressing his book on everybody. You got to buy his book because he whines about it all the time. He wrote this book and he cries. And I understand that if you don't sell a certain number of these books, that painting is going to attack his cat or something like that.
Oh, it just
All right. Go to California.
All right, we'll go to California, and the story here is the many horrors of Turnbull Canyon. Located near LA between Whittier and City of Industry, Turnbull is a 49,000-acre smorgasbord of nightmare fuel set amid the scenic hills. You want your scares rooted in American history? Well, the natives called it Hutakunga, or the place of the devil, where the ghosts of those slain for not converting to Christianity dwell alongside witches and Satanists who reportedly used the place to sacrifice children, whose spirits now walk the canyon and dangle from the trees. They are joined by the ghosts of 21 kids who perished in a plane crash back in 1952, allegedly, because there's no existing record of it. Then there's the remains of the old insane asylum that came back to life to kill a teen in the 60s via a long dormant electrical wire. There are cults, alien encounters, gravity hills. It goes on and on. Basically, if it's something that gets under your skin, there's probably a story about it happening in this seemingly cursed canyon. The place's evil vibe dates back centuries, though it wasn't until the site was established as a fur trapping site in 1845 that things started getting really intense, with word of the site's terrors traveling far and wide, making it a place visited as much for its beauty as its morbid curiosity. And then next we have Colorado Riverdale Road.
Morbid curiosity?
Yeah. Morbid curiosity in Turnbull Canyon, California. All right, so Colorado, they have Riverdale Road. No, not Riverdale CW. It's the Riverdale Road in Colorado. For 11 horrifying miles, Riverdale Road near Thornton, Colorado is crammed with enough horrifying legends to bring even the bravest paranormal investigator to his knees. From a ghostly runner attacking people or attacking parked cars on Joggers Hill to various demons and even a phantom Camaro revving up and down the winding road. But the gates of hell seems the epicenter. The physical iron gates are now gone, but what remains is the partial shell of an old mansion where a madman supposedly burned his wife and children alive. Left behind are the barren, charred plot of land and a white-clad woman who wanders the area. She's joined by the ghost of slaves supposedly hanged from the now charred tree. Go ahead and run away when you see something creepy like an ethereal pack of dogs. You're probably just going to bump into something worse, possibly hell, a portal to which some believe is right here in this property. That maybe explains why so many demons were conjured in a weird underground chicken coop near a set of underground tunnels. It's unknown when things got really hairy, though given the spirits of ghost slaves, it's safe to assume terrible things have been happening on Riverdale Road since the 1850s. And each time something terrible happened over the decades, it just kind of got stacked onto this nesting doll of a horror show. And that's the end of that story. Shall we toss it back over to Graham over there?
Let's go with a couple of more. But real quick, this is not the right cover. I was looking for it when he was talking, and I've got it somewhere. But anyway, the name of the book is Dating the Dead and Spectrophilia. It can be found on Amazon.com. It is twice the book it originally was because a lot of stories been added to it. People who have married ghosts, have had sex with Bigfoot, in love physically, emotionally with their car. It's like, oh, that's what a tailpipe's for, okay? A lot of interesting stories, and even brings in religion as far as the Catholics and what they do. And then the Mormons, they actually will marry for the dead in proxy. They baptize for the dead. So there's a lot of interesting things, and I did not have to use any imagination to get this book. So he's got his book that he's promoting. I got to promote mine too. Amazon.com, or you can go, guess what, to datingthedead.com, and you can purchase directly from me. And just like the guy in the white hat, I will personally my book for you as well. Now, this for us, at least old enough to remember, like in the 70s and 80s, you'll recognize this. Boom. Who's that?
Elmo.
Elmo. There's a story behind Elmo. The furry red Elmo doll is one of the most successful toys ever sold. Talking Elmo dolls have been a must-have holiday gift since the first one was sold in 1996. I thought they were a little bit older than that. Early giggled. They acquired larger vocabularies as the years went on, but that doesn't explain the Elmo Knows Your Name doll purchased by the Bowen family in 2008 for their 2-year-old son, James. Elmo Knows Your Name was programmed to speak the owner's name along with a few other phrases. But when the Bowens changed Elmo's batteries, he started ad-libbing. In a sing-song voice, the doll chanted, "Kill James, kill James." Not something that any parent is likely to find endearing. So there was one that you may not have been aware of regarding Elmo. Interesting. Elmo. Let's see where we're going next here. We got another one here, and let me grab that picture really quick. This is Mandy. Now, have you heard of Mandy?
Oh, yeah, I've heard this one.
Okay. Kevin knows all about these dolls. Nothing with dolls is going to surprise him at all. Were you aware of Einstein's talking doll?
If I did, I forgot. But I was reminded today when I saw your post out there about it.
Yeah. That was a creepy sounding audio, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is Mandy, and she doesn't play well with others. In the Westnell Museum in Canada, where she now lives, staff say they must keep her in a separate display case because when she's displayed with other dolls, she knocks them over. Staff also report their lunches disappear and that visitors' cameras often fail when taking pictures of Mandy the doll. Mandy's a porcelain baby doll, probably manufactured in Europe around 1910. The woman who donated her reportedly told the museum she was getting rid of the doll because it would cry at night. Are you familiar then with this next one I'm going to go to? And let me get the picture up here for everyone to see. And this is a gang of dolls.
Oh,
it's called the Haunted Gang. Have you ever heard of this one?
No.
Most haunted dolls are dumped by their owners when they start behaving badly. But the owners of these 8 dolls were reportedly interested in paranormal phenomena and bought the collection because they were said to be possessed. Sounds like Kevin. Their names: Crystal, Monica, Charla, True, Isaac, Lily, Cameron, and Ashley. You got some new names there. The owners have a camera constantly recording the dolls and other parts of the house. And in 2009, one camera appears to have recorded something very strange: a ghostly boy appearing at the bottom of a staircase. And now, before I go further, we're going to go back to Kevin.
Oh, okay.
Some states to cover. Where are we going next? You said Colorado?
Yes. No, we just did Colorado. Now we're going to Connecticut.
Connecticut. We're going to the other country. Connecticut, a very small little state compared to Colorado, but
yeah,
let's have it.
All right. Connecticut we have Dublin Town, often cited as a dark vortex.
Something happened with audio.
Oh, okay. Rumor has it that any visitor that steals an artifact.
I don't know if that's just on my end or what. Talk again.
Okay, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Oh, okay.
Let's try it again.
Okay. Rumor has it that any visitor that steals an artifact from Dudleytown will have a curse put on them and their family. Dudleytown forest visitors report seeing just about every kind of paranormal phenomena you could think of. People describe an unnerving lack of wildlife in the area, as well as floating orbs of light and sinister wolf-like black shadows, murmurs and disembodied voices, as well as a feeling of general dread. Add on the fact there's a mysterious group called the Dark Forest Association that polices the grounds with militant force, and you've got yourself a serious case of what the hell is really going on here. The curse of the ill-fated Dudleys began back in jolly old England, where Edmund Dudley was beheaded for conspiring against King Henry VII. This treacherous act apparently unleashed a curse on the rest of the Dudley clan, which emigrated from Guildford, England to Cornwall, Connecticut in 1748. They helped establish a community centered around the town's then thriving iron industry before a series of untimely disasters befell the family. These calamities included a series of mysterious deaths, which in turn inspired madness and suicide among the Dudleys, several of whom disappeared into the woods, never to be seen again. The remaining residents very sensibly ditched the town, which has been abandoned ever since. So stay out of Dudleytown, Connecticut, whatever you do. All right, now we go to Delaware, and this is an interesting name here. In Delaware, they have the legend of Mr. Chew. C-H-E-W, Mr. Chew. Samuel Chew was a respected man, a chief justice in the state back in the colonial days. Still, even in colonial America, bullies lashed onto his name, constantly proclaiming, "I chew," as if sneezing. He apparently hated it so much that his spirit still stalks those who mock him, showing up in his robes and powdered wig to scare the ever-loving crap out of people who can't resist the easy joke at the expense of a centuries-dead legislator, I should say. Chew was very much a real man, serving as Chief Justice of the 3 lower counties until he died in 1743. Things got so unsettling that people eventually held a funeral for the ghost in Devers Green, laying his spirit to rest in an ornate grave. He seemed to be placated, though he's still known to mess with smart alecks who sneeze at the mention of his name. So don't do the "achoo" joke around his area. You might get a haunting there. All right, and then moving down south to Florida, way deep down south to Florida, we have, guess who? The skunk ape. Whew, the skunk ape. The Everglades are filled with an array of terrifying creatures: man-eating alligators, man-eating snakes, men-eating roadkill. However, one human-like figure has been spotted enough times to warrant elevated levels of concern: the skunk ape. A relative of Bigfoot, a fully grown skunk ape stands anywhere from 5 to 7 feet tall and weighs approximately 450 pounds. They can be detected by a horrific odor that's been described as sun-baked animal carcass and rotting garbage. They mostly eat berries and small animals, but from time to time, they've been known to ravage farms and tear wild boars to shreds. Recently, a skunk ape headquarters has popped up in the Everglades, where you can book tours out into the swamp or reserve a spot on a hunting expedition to finally prove the hairy beast is real once and for all. No one can say for sure where it came from, but because its lineage can be traced back to Bigfoot, many believe it migrated south from the mountains and found refuge in the swamplands, an environment safe from humans with ample sustenance and room to roam. Others believe it's just lore, a tale the pioneers created in order to scare people off their lands and preserve the wilderness. Whatever you believe, should you find yourself camping in the Everglades and you smell something foul, take caution. It could be the skunk ape. Oh, I can't hear you.
I muted myself. Okay, so they know that it wasn't you that didn't take a bath. It was a skunk.
Oh, I bathe every day. I even wash my hair every day.
I wash mine too. God, where do we go next?
Oh, Georgia.
Oh, okay. Get Georgia. All right.
Georgia on my mind. Okay, this one's got the curse of Lake Lanier. Or that might be pronounced Lanier. The curse of Lake Lanier.
There you go. It's Lanier.
Lanier, okay.
I know people in Georgia.
Okay, yeah, I know a few, but yeah. It hit me. I said, that's Lanier, not Lanier. Okay, the massive man-made lake north of Atlanta is unnerving on multiple fronts, with a reputation for tragic and sometimes mysterious deaths. From a disproportionately high frequency of boating accidents and drownings to unexplained homicides. A construction crew discovered the skeleton of a woman who disappeared in 1958, still trapped in her car at the bottom of the lake more than 30 years later. And since then, people have reported sightings of a ghostly female figure on the lake's waters. There are even reports of malevolent catfish lurking on the bottom that are large enough to swallow a dog or even a diver. There were numerous issues with the construction of the lake, not the least of which included the displacement of families, businesses, and even cemeteries occupying the land the Army Corps of Engineers sought to develop. The vestiges of some of these structures still have a ghostly presence at the bottom of the lake, which some point to as a source of Lanier's haunted reputation. Others point to the simple water plus alcohol equals accidents formula to explain the tragedies. Lanier is a notorious party lake after all, but as noted above, many of the deaths go beyond simple boating accidents, leading some to believe there is something more sinister at work. And that was Lake Lanier.
Georgia, yeah. Have you ever been to Lake Lanier?
I might have. I've heard the name over and over again, but I don't know. I've been in Atlanta several times.
It's north of Atlanta, a very popular place.
Okay, we might have driven past it going to Toccoa. I can't remember.
Yeah. Do you recognize this guy?
He looks familiar.
He don't have any feet, does he?
I think the legs are up, and it's the flat bottoms of his feet that we're seeing there.
Yeah, we got rid of. He's got Donald Trump hands, real tiny hands.
Oh.
Well, I couldn't resist that. Sorry. Well, this guy is Ruby. Maybe it's a female, Ruby, and that's got to be a very old doll. You see the way the hair is there.
Yeah.
And like a few of the dolls that I've been talking about tonight, Ruby just has a problem staying in one place at a time. Its owners often found the doll in different rooms of the house. What's more, picking up Ruby induced feelings of sadness and nausea. Have you ever had that happen to one of your dolls?
No, not. I mean, I've once or twice I picked up a little bit of sadness, but never nausea. Well, let me correct myself. I did get nausea from that doll with the demonic attached to it that came from Baton Rouge, but after I blessed it, that went away, and that's pretty much the only time.
You still have that doll?
Yeah, I have. It's still sealed up in a case.
What's that doll's name?
Her name is Lori.
Lori, okay.
Yeah.
Well, according to its former owners, Ruby was passed down from generation to generation. The doll's spooky origin traces back many years ago to a young family relative who was said to have passed away while clutching this figurine. After jumping between different family members, Ruby has now found her forever home at the Traveling Museum of the Paranormal and the Occult. Often feel an overwhelming feeling of sorrow from the doll. So I don't know if I'd want to even found that doll. Now this is Charlie. Have you heard of Charlie?
I haven't seen him before.
Well, like I said, I think there's going to be a couple here that I haven't, and I didn't know if you had or not, but this is Charlie. Charlie was first discovered in the attic of an old Victorian home up in upstate New York in 1968. And Charlie was locked inside a trunk with newspapers dating back to the 1930s and a yellowed piece of paper that had the Lord's Prayer written on it. The family placed the figurine on display with their other dolls and toys. Soon, however, to move on its own, swapping places with other toys. Okay. Not long thereafter, family's youngest daughter claimed that Charlie spoke to her in the middle of the night. The parents, of course, dismissed the claim, chalking it up to their daughter's overactive imagination. But the little girl and her siblings were terrified of Charlie. They refused to go near Charlie. When mysterious scratches appeared on the little girl's body, the family decided to lock Charlie back in the attic trunk. Charlie now resides at Local Artisan, a Beverly, Massachusetts oddity shop just minutes away from Salem. Swing by and say hello to Charlie. Hello, Charlie. Now, I know, and I'm sure you know of this next one, and I'll go on and get it out of the way. This is down in Mexico way, the Island of the Dolls. And it's a canal system just south of Mexico City. The isle's completely covered by broken and decaying dolls that hang from the trees. The dolls were placed there by a Julian Santana Barrera, the former owner of the island, who festooned the island with dolls in an effort to appease a spirit of a girl who had drowned nearby. The site is only accessible by boat, and given its eerie backstory and unsettling state, the Island of the Dolls is a popular tourist destination. Those who visit the island and walk among the dolls often claim the figurines whisper to them. Visitors are also encouraged to leave offerings or other dolls on the island to add to the collection. So if you ever get down to Mexico City way, you might want to go to the Island of the Dolls. Yeah, where are we going next?
Okay, let's see where we're going next here on this list of the top urban legends in all 50 states. We're going to Hawaii. Oh, I'd love to go to Hawaii. In Hawaii, we've got the story. It's called The Night Marchers. Picture yourself on a scenic Hawaiian beach at night. Imagine a full moon and a cool breeze running across the sand. Dreamy, but if you hear the faint sound of drums pounding in the distance or see a barrage of torches out on the horizon, it could be your worst nightmare. These spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors dedicated to protecting the islands from all outside threats will only spare your life if you reportedly lay face down, pee on yourself in submission, or if miraculously you share a bloodline with one of the warriors. Good luck peeing on yourself, tourist.
But I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly. Pee on yourself?
Pee on yourself. Really, that's a very humbling experience.
I'm sure that we've all peed on ourselves at one time or the other, but
man, these ghosts have a big demand here.
Go ahead.
All right. The first alleged encounter with the night marches, known as Wakaipo in Hawaiian, was recorded when Captain Cook arrived on Hawaiian shores in 1778. In Hawaiian tradition, the night marchers' role in life was to protect sacred members of the community. In modern times, their spirits have been reported all throughout the islands, mainly at the sites of sacrificial temples and other sacred grounds. Oh, and the decidedly corporate Davies Pacific Center building in downtown Honolulu. Apparently, they still protect the island from outsiders. And if you buy into the legend, they always will. All right, moving off that beautiful island of Hawaii, as much as we don't want to, let's move over to the potato capital, Idaho, where they have the Phantom Jogger of Canyon Hill. There are rumors of many hauntings in Caldwell, which is Idaho's century-old Canyon Hill Cemetery. But the one that gets the most attention is the Midnight Jogger. As with many of the best urban legends, you have to do your part to get her attention. In this case, it involves parking between certain trees in the cemetery at night. Do it right, and the legless apparition will knock on your window to let you know she's there. Then she'll continue on her route. It's creepy as hell, though now it's only the second worst image conjured when you think of sinister joggers. The origins of this story are unknown, though, considering there's another conspiratorial legend that the entire state of Idaho does not actually exist. Perhaps the jogger is just a creation of a deranged and deceptive government. All right. And then just
Just want to remind everybody where we were.
that was good.
There you go. This is just for Kevin's stories right here. This is real quick. Watch carefully. Okay, so what state was that now?
That was Idaho, and now we're moving to Illinois.
Yeah,
In good old Chicagoland up there.
Illinois.
Illinois.
Do you say Illinois or Illinois?
Huh?
Do you say Illinois or Illinois?
I would say Illinois.
Okay, yeah. I don't use the S.
No, I don't.
Right. Kevin's going to take us to Illinois, which is going to bring us to the top of the hour, and then we'll talk about some books and do some relentless self-promoting crap.
All right. In Illinois, we have the story of the Italian bride. The Italian bride. An elaborate marble statue of a woman in a wedding dress is bound to stand out in a cemetery as it is, but that's not what's driven the Italian bride to be a subject of local fascination. Upon closer inspection, there's an actual photo plaque on the gravesite of a woman in a casket, looking perfectly preserved, even though, as an inscription notes, the photo was taken 6 years after burial, after the body was exhumed. Reports of unusual activity cover everything from the smell of fresh flowers near the gravesite in the dead of winter to the ghostly figure of a woman in white roaming the cemetery, or the halls of nearby Proviso West High School in the dead of the night. In 1921, recently married Julia Bucola Petta died in childbirth and was buried in her wedding dress. Legend has it, her mother immediately began experiencing nightmares that Julia was demanding her grave be reopened. The source of the distress varies depending on the storyteller, often relating to some sort of discontent with Julia's new husband. But what isn't in dispute is that 6 years later, the mother got her wish, and Julia's pristine condition inspired her to raise funds for the statue that's been creeping out generations ever since. The Italian bride.
Italiano. No. All right. Got some red wine to go with that story. Well, we got 5 minutes till 8, so I'm going to get this guy out of the way. Have you seen this feller before?
I've seen that feller. He was on TV.
His name is Letta the Doll, Letta. the doll, also known as, get this, Let Me Out.
Oh,
He sounds Italian. Let Me Out.
Hmm.
Is truly one of the scariest looking haunted dolls out there. The child size figurine is said to be about 200 years old and is made of carved wood and real human hair. See, that's what gets them right there. You start putting real human hair on something, you're going to get a haunting. Let's face it. The doll's owner, Carrie Walton, claims to have found Letta in the 70s while exploring a deserted home. Boy, there's some weird names here. In Wagga Wagga, Australia. Wagga Wagga, Australia. Walton brought back the figurine to his home in Queensland. Soon thereafter, strange events began to occur. Household items shifted positions. Scuff marks appeared on the floor. The Waltons' children complained of nightmares. One night, they woke up that Letta was talking and moving around on its own. Dogs turned aggressive whenever they were near the doll, while guests claimed to see the doll move. At some point, Walton tried to sell off Letta, only to find that he physically couldn't get him out of the car. Walton asserts Letta's origins trace back to Eastern Europe. He believes the doll is a vessel haunted by the spirit of a boy who drowned many years ago. Letta currently tours around Australia with Walton, sitting on the laps of those who are brave enough to take a picture with the grinning figurine. That is Letta, as in Let Me Out. That is a creepy looking doll, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would you want that doll in your house?
Well, you know what? I wouldn't mind having it. I've got some creepy enough looking dolls already.
We are 2 minutes to the big hour of 8 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And if you don't know about this, he's going to tell you about it right now.
All right. Once again, Crimson the Blood painting, based on a true, actual haunted painting from Salem, Massachusetts, the home of the witches. In fact, this painting once hung in the house of a witch, and it dates back to the late 1800s. I do have it in my collection, and it was just so creepy, I had to write a book about it. So there it is, Crimson the Blood painting, a novel based on that painting, in paperback on myhauntedDolls.com if you want it autographed. And it's also, if you like using your Amazon or Books A Million, it's out there too. Or it's on ebook if you want to get it on Kindle. And it's also in audiobook, performed by actress Lynn Thomas. So be sure to check that out. So now you have no excuse. You must get the book, Crimson the Blood painting.
Now that painting is on a wall in his house, it still resides with a witch. And just for a side note to help Kevin out there, if you go to his website and his Amazon store, he's got 11 books out there. You can pick and choose. Better if you tell him you want all 11 books, he might make you a deal. You never know. If you buy directly from him, he might give you like a penny off a book.
A penny off.
But he'll charge extra if he's got to autograph all 11 books. That's going to take time. He'll get writer's cramp. So with that, I don't have the correct cover on here, but Dating the Dead and Spectrophilia, my book, is found on Amazon.com with a lot of other books, but I don't have a lot of books that deal with the paranormal and strangeness. I've got some more serious writings out there because I'm a boring person. But these are interesting stories. Dating the Dead is just a fascinating telling of humans' relationship with the dead. And anybody that knows today, you can't get on your cable or your satellite dish, whatever you get your cable with. There's always some program on about aliens, about hunting. Avoid it. Everybody wants to talk to the dead or talk to aliens, and some want to find Bigfoot. And in that book, there's one woman that says she had sex with Bigfoot, and she can confirm that the feet of Bigfoot are not the only things big about Bigfoot. So, all right, take that as you will. It also has an almost X-rated picture in there, so keep it out of your child's hands. This is for sure. The stories are not child-proof. Trust me. It's your child, but I'm just telling you, I didn't write it for your kids. It's a compilation of stories that took me no imagination to come up with. These people did it. Now, I'm going to throughout history, children have been in society abandoned by their caregivers or thrown into the wild. And according to certain reports, some of these outcasts were even raised by animals. Though said wild tales often test the limits of plausibility, called feral children, these individuals show just how important society is to the healthy growth of youngsters. Without human contact, these children are unable to learn to communicate, walk, or become interested in other people around them. All the tales I'm going to share here this evening are tragic. Some are all too real, while others have the tings of legend to them. From Romulus and Remus to the Russian bird boy, these are the most infamous stories of feral children. Some actually have happy endings, but some will certainly break your heart. So the first one that I'm going to cover is Danny Lilu. And if I pronounce some of these wrong, just bear with me. But here is a photograph of this girl. Actually, it says, well, yeah. Okay. And believe it or not, this occurred, Danny Lero. In 2008, the Tampa Bay Times published a special report on one of the most horrifying cases of child abuse and neglect ever recorded. 3 years prior, a police officer had responded to a call from a resident in Plant City, Florida. The resident, after having seen the face of a little girl in the window of a rundown rental home nearby, was concerned about possible child abuse. When the authorities arrived at the home, they found a woman living in a nest of cockroaches, filth, and with food and feces smeared on the walls. In this midst of this horrific scene was a then 6-year-old Danielle, severely malnourished and wearing a soiled diaper. Danielle was immediately taken from her mother's custody, sent to the hospital for care and observation. And according to the Tampa Bay Times, doctors had no way of knowing the extent of what Danielle had endured. But based on what they had seen, they surmised that she had never been cared for beyond basic sustenance. Hard as it was to imagine, they doubted she had ever been taken out in the sun, sung to sleep, even hugged. This extreme abuse and neglect had caused Danielle to retreat into herself. Her behavior and skills similar to that of an infant. Doctors declared that her abuse would leave her permanently and severely disabled. That is a horrifying story, in my opinion. So I'm sorry, I'm going to make a lot of people sad. Some of these, but some will have a good ending. So now let's revert back to Mr. Kevin Kane with My Haunted Dolls as he continues his journey through all the states of the great United States with a horrifying tale from each of these states.
And next we're going to be going to Indiana, where they have the story of Diana of the Dunes. Along the shores of Lake Michigan, fishermen, vacationers, and other passerby have reported sightings of Diana, a ghostly nude female apparition floating along the shoreline and eventually disappearing into the water without a trace. Fishermen first started reporting the sightings of a woman skinny dipping in the waters off Indiana's Lake Michigan coastline in 1916. And that's because Alice Gray, which is the source of the Diana legend, was still very much alive at that point. The exact circumstances that caused her to live a reclusive life in a lakeside shack aren't entirely clear, but the years that followed saw her marry a man who later became a murder suspect and then die an early death, allegedly from uremic poisoning. Her ghostly presence has been a subject of local lore ever since. And then on to Iowa.
I got to interrupt
Okay.
just 1 second because I didn't end the story of Danielle properly.
Oh, okay.
It does have a happy ending. I left it on a sour note, and now I'd be remiss if I didn't correct it.
Okay.
Luckily, Danielle's story does have a happy ending, for in 2007, she was adopted by a couple, Bernie and Diane Lero. They called her Dani, D-A-N-I, brought her into a loving home and attempted to rehabilitate this horrifically abused little girl. And in 2018, the same reporter who initially broke Dani's story, Lane DeGregory, visited the young woman, now 19. Dani lives in a group home today with other residents with mental and developmental disabilities. She is still unable to speak, although she does laugh and recognize her loved ones, including her who visits her regularly. And again, I apologize for not noticing that I did not finish the story on a little bit higher note than it was. So back to Kevin.
All right, we're going to move on to Iowa with their most popular urban legend. This is going to be very familiar to those in the paranormal world like myself. Villisca Axe Murder House. So what part of Axe Murder House don't you understand? It's scary. The murders themselves are very much not an urban legend. They actually happened, and they remain unsolved. Sometime between the evening of June 9th, 1912 and the morning that followed, 6 members of the Moore family and 2 house guests were brutally murdered, with each victim having suffered an axe wound to the head. One suspect was tried twice and never convicted. Surprising no one, the somehow still standing house is the subject of numerous rumors, legends, and reports of paranormal activity. Toy balls have been seen rolling across the old children's bedroom. Disembodied voices and giggles have been heard. Shadows across the wall. Footsteps in the attic. You can find out for yourself because you can actually stay there, just like the ghost hunter who mysteriously stabbed himself in the chest there in 2014. Now this article ticks me off because they end it right there. Who is this ghost hunter who mysteriously stabbed himself in the chest in 2014? We'll have to look that up. But moving on to Kansas now. Stoll's Gateway to Hell. The tiny town of Stoll has counted very few residents since it was founded in 1856. The most famous is rumored to be Lucifer himself, who some say appears at the town cemetery on Halloween and spring equinox. They say he uses the site where a roofless church once stood as a portal to and from hell. Some say that he's drawn to the site of frequent witch hangings. Others believe one of the graves actually contains Satan's own child. Either way, new graves continue to be dug despite signs warning against trespassers, perhaps referring directly to the Prince of Darkness himself, or the cults that are rumored to flock to the grounds. The first published article about the horrors of this place are traced back to a 1974 article in the University Daily Kansan, though whispers about evil have persisted since 1900 or so. In 1998, the hanging tree was torn down to stop people from visiting. It has not lessened the need for the small town to bolster an annual police presence to deter visitors looking for a glimpse of the devil himself. And now to Kentucky, the mountains of Kentucky. We have the Witch Girl of Pilot's Knob. Just looking at the picture of young Mary Evelyn Ford's grave feels a bit unnerving, with a series of interlocking white crosses forming a fence around a pit of gravel and the bars appearing unnaturally bent in some places. Then you hear the alleged backstory. A mother and daughter both accused of witchcraft and burned at the stake in 1916, with the mother's charred remains being carried to a far-off location while the daughter was buried in a steel-lined coffin covered in stone and encased in crosses to prevent her escape. Some have claimed to witness tiny footprints appearing in the gravel, or even a young ghostly figure trying to escape the gravesite. Kid ghosts, as we know, are the creepiest of ghosts. While stories about the grave go back for decades and naturally increased in detail with the growth of the internet, there's not much evidence that anyone was burned at the stake for witchcraft in the area in 1916. Even back then, that was generally big news. Mary Evelyn Ford really did die a tragic young death, but the stated cause of death is peritonitis, an inflammation of the stomach lining. It's amazing what a truly unnerving gravesite can do for the imagination. We still wouldn't want to be near it at night, just in case. That's where a lot of urban legends are born from. Just a place looking creepy can spawn stories out there in creative minds.
The heat prevented us from doing what we're going to do last Saturday, Fraternal Cemetery.
Yeah.
That is got all the ambience of spookiness from A to Z. If you like that, you'll love this place. Compared to Bass Cemetery, which I'll admit I haven't been to Bass Cemetery in years, probably a couple of decades. But I wasn't too impressed back when I went. It's not that big, and it was kind of like a trashy place, if you know what I'm saying. So, what you live on more land than what that cemetery takes up by a long shot.
Oh,
Unless, it's a very small cemetery. Got some old graves, but I it is what it is. But the Fraternal Cemetery, when I ran across that one, it was like, wow, that's an awesome place, just for photography and that kind of stuff. And then, of course, we used the thermal imaging camera out there and got some interesting stuff, even in the daylight.
Mm-hmm.
But it has been freaking hot. And on top of the heat itself, which is horrible on men that have extra meat on their body, it also brings out all the slimy, slithery snakes you could think of. And that kind of takes away from the fun of trudging through high grass and, getting ticks. And so we're going to wait for cooler weather.
Okay.
Unless you want to take a risk, I'll sit in the car and you can walk through it.
I don't want to melt, so I can wait till cooler weather.
God, it's just, and if I don't adjust my temperature on my thermostat early in the day properly, it's hard to cool the house down later in the day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's a mess. So anyway, now we're talking about feral kids on my end. And this is an old story of Romulus and Remus. Do you remember this story?
Hey, I think so.
So Romulus and Remus are the most mythological feral children on the list I've been reading from. And although the details of other wild children may be exaggerated, thanks to the distance of time, there is a definite historical evidence of the existence of Romulus and Remus. The story of the Wolf Boys, however, is almost certainly a myth, although their tale may have some historical genesis, kind of like the book Kevin wrote. According to Roman mythology, Romulus and Remus were born into the ruling family of Alba Longa, an ancient city Latium. Shortly after giving birth, their mother, Rhea Silvia, a priestess of Vesta, was ordered to abandon the pair to the Tiber River by her cruel and power-hungry uncle, Amulius. Some versions of the story claim that the twin boys were sired by the god Mars. Their demigod and the nobility of their mother's blood, daughter of the former king, made the boys a dire threat to Amulus, now king. But the mighty stream kept Romulus and Remus afloat, and they were soon rescued by a she-wolf. The creature let the brother for her milk until a shepherd family found the boys and raised them into adulthood. Upon discovering their prestigious lineage, Romulus and Remus tracked down Amulus and murdered him. They then set out to establish a city of their own. Unfortunately, they disagreed as to where it should be found. The argument spilled over into bloody confrontation, and the rest is ancient history. Romulus killed his brother, then went on to found the city, which he named Rome after himself. So there is a story of Romulus and Remus. If you remember it, I brought it back to the forefront of your memories with that. And now Kevin is still plodding through all the states. And where are we now, Missouri?
No, now we're in Louisiana.
Louisiana. Can you get your Cajun on?
And in the bayou down in the Cajun country. I can't do it with Cajun accent.
Got some crawfish?
Laissez bon temps roulon.
You got some gator meat?
Oh yeah, we got some up the road at the Cajun Boys restaurant. So
have you tried gator meat before?
Yeah, they got gator sausage over there. It was good.
They told me it tastes like chicken.
Everything tastes like chicken.
All right, then let's head down to Louisiana.
All right, this one, Louisiana's got a lot of urban legends. They got their own swamp monster. They got ghosts and witches, and they also have vampires. And this story is the Vampire Comte de Saint-Germain. That's a mouthful of a name right there, Comte de Saint-Germain. As far as spooky stuff goes, Louisiana does not rely solely on voodoo or hoodoo, ghosts or witches. Like any debonair bloodsucker male vampire worth his garlic, Jacques Saint-Germain's hobby is seducing attractive young females in New Orleans, only to promptly drink their blood. By some accounts, he was born in the 1700s. In others, he has been alive since the time of Christ. After dying in 1783, he was spotted all over Europe before reappearing to terrorize New Orleans 1902. He's still on his blood-drinking binge in the French Quarter today, though now he just goes by Jack. Nice rebrand. Comte de Saint-Germain was certainly a real person, an alchemist and all-around high society snob who befriended a laundry list of famous 18th century luminaries. He ran with crews including King Louis XV, Catherine the Great, and the philosopher Voltaire, who said he was, quote, a man who never dies and who knows everything, unquote. He has been tied to several local murders, and in the 1970s, a French pseudo-celeb named Richard Chanfray publicly claimed to be the infamous Saint-Germain, but then he died of a drug overdose in 1983. Or did he? Probably he did, but still that legend of the vampire remains. So now we move way up north to Maine. And in that little cold, probably frigid state of Maine, we have a story called Wood Island Light. Instead of providing useful light to help ships navigate, the lighthouse on Wood Island reportedly provides a space for strange moans, unexplained shadows, and other indicators of paranormal activity commonly attributed to a murder-suicide that took place there decades ago. Howard Hobbs, a local fisherman and drifter, really did murder his landlord, Fred Milliken, on the Wood Island in 1896. Hobbs had been drinking and, after shooting Milliken, left the scene and turned his rifle on himself. You can read about the events of that day in all of their 19th century newspaper glory here. From ghost experts who weigh in on such things, Hobbs is generally considered the likeliest candidate to still be haunting the lighthouse. Now we drift a little south from there and we go to the state of Maryland, the Goat Man. Maryland's infamous Goat Man allegedly does all the things you would expect a deranged, half goat, half man to do. Kill teenagers, eat dogs, scream like a goat, etc. But the most terrifying aspect is just how deep the lore goes. The USDA was even forced at one point to publicly deny accidentally creating the beast in their Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. Another tale revolves around a goat farmer who, after realizing a group of rowdy teens had killed his tribe, went totally crazy and turned into a teen-slaying goat monster. Though the lore has been around for a while, the first recorded media mentions of the Goat Man occurred in 1971, courtesy of writer Karen Hostler of the Prince George's County News. The first was a deep dive into Maryland folklore, followed by an actual news item about a family blaming the brutal decapitation of their puppy on the Goat Man, which they may or may not have just heard about via the county news. 1 month later, the Washington Post ran a national feature detailing the legend of the Goat Man. Ultimately, the Goat Man has become one of America's most persistent and well-known urban legends, with claimed sightings still occurring with regularity and cheesy fictionalizations still creeping out in the old Line State. And now, close by there, we have Massachusetts and the curse of Giles Corey. Now we're getting into the Salem witch trial stuff. The Salem witch trials were creepy enough to begin with. You can go read The Crucible again if you don't believe it. But the story of Giles Corey, who was slowly pressed to death under a series of progressively heavier rocks in an effort to extract a confession, is particularly unsettling. Legend has it he uttered a curse against Salem right before his dying breath. You could understand why he'd have some ill will. For generations, his apparition has allegedly appeared in the cemetery before something terrible is about to happen, including a 1914 fire that burned down a sizable proportion of the city. There has also been a series of tragedies that have hit the Salem Sheriff's Office, starting with the 1696 heart attack that killed George Corwin 4 years after he presided over the trials. So that's a pretty creepy story right there.
Creeping me out.
Creeps you out.
Creeping me out. We're about 24 minutes coming up on the half hour to our last half hour here at a combo live stream of Abnormal Alabama and My Haunted Dog. And of course, Abnormal Alabama is abnormalalabama.com. My Haunted Dolls is myhauntedDolls.com. We are both on YouTube. We're both on Facebook. We both have websites. We're just all over. If you enjoy any of the stuff we do on this show, you better join our group over on Facebook, because we share constantly posting all kinds of weird, quirky, myth, fiction, and some truth. And you don't want to miss out on that. On the YouTube channel, you'll find a series of all these live streams we've done, including the dolls that came alive and now may be featured in a television show. And that's all I'm going to say. But someone has made some inquiry, and this production company is a well-known production company that produces a lot of well-known TV shows. So we'll see if they follow up. I think they contacted you, Kevin.
Yeah, and I've been told for right now they're going to look at it and see if this story is will fit in well with the show they're planning, and then she's
Okay.
going to chat it up with me and contact y'all, I guess. And
Good deal. So if you want to preview what we're talking about, it's on the YouTube channel, and you type in Haunted Dolls Abnormal Alabama on YouTube, and they'll pop up. And I excerpted that portion. It would happen on a live stream, just like we're doing right now, and it is a very powerful event. There's my book, except it's got the wrong cover here. I've changed the cover because I also linked in the book. I still have the original version for sale, but now it's about twice as long with a lot more interesting stories in it. And myhaunteddolls.com is the way to find that book. Now, there's Kevin Gaines, Crimson, the Blood Painting. I don't know. He's got that painting in his house. It's based on a true story, loosely on a true story. Is that correct?
Yep. It's a novelization based on the actual haunted painting.
You need to change your backdrop to that painting.
Oh.
Hook it up real good. MyHauntedDolls.com. He's on YouTube. My Haunted Dolls, Kevin Kane on YouTube. So we are going to shamelessly self-promote. We both have a lot of books here. Okay, yes, Meg Griffin, I just switched over there. She's chatting with us, I believe, here on YouTube. It's where, and yes, we are very familiar with Catherine Tucker Wyndham.
Yeah.
Meg Griffin says that she met her while she was a little girl, and she grew up in Montebello. So if you tune into us, if you haven't subscribed to our channel on YouTube, you'll find that we have told many ghost stories around Montebello.
Yeah.
So, and of course, Shelby County in general. And we got just a slew of videos about different interesting things around there too. And if you like haunted stories or haunted dolls, Kevin is your man. You see behind him, he's got the dolls and a lot of stories to go with it. At myhauntedDolls.com. Mine, my favorite book is datingthedead.com. See, I live in Louisiana now and I can't find her books. She knows all the, Meg says she knows all the stories by heart. So that's great. Did you hear, Meg, the Louisiana stories that Kevin just shared down there? And I know there's a little lag time here, so response time goes a little bit. Yeah. But abnormalalabama.com, datingthedead.com, myhauntedDolls.com. Kevin and I both have a slew of books for sale on amazon.com. Kevin's are all dealing with kind of the paranormal and whatnot. Not all of mine are. I have some other works because I deal with weddings, relationships, and so forth. And so I got some other stuff. Okay. She just got on. This will be archived here, Meg, so you can go back and listen to this entire program after it's finished, and you can hear the stories that he checked out there. Let's see. And
are you getting drunk over there? Are you getting drunk over there? You just, oh,
no, I'm no, I wished. Meg, thank you for joining us. Now, I think that, is it my turn to go with this? Meg, I'm still here. I'm going to go into this story, and I'm talking about some feral kids. I don't know if you've heard of all these or not, but this is Peter Wildboy, and here is Peter's story. And the painting you're looking at was painted by William Kent at Kensington Palace. In 1725, a group of hunters found a feral child wandering the forest near the German town of Hamelin. He crawled on all fours, ate forest plants, and could barely speak. Those who discovered the feral child found him to be completely uncivilized. Well, I mean, maybe he was from Alabama. By some trick of fate, the boy was transferred to Britain, where he was briefly adopted by King George I. All attempts to educate him proved fruitless. Though the child grew into adulthood and lived out his life until age 70, it's now believed that he most likely suffered Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, a rare chromosome disorder that affects normal development. The chromosome abnormality consists of physical traits: short stature, hooded eyebrows, Cupid's bow, with a prominent curve to the upper lip, and some fingers on his left hand were fused. Pitt-Hopkins syndrome can also cause severe neurological effects, like the inability to develop speech. But with medical knowledge lacking on this front during Georgian England, many saw Peter as a novelty, especially Caroline, Princess of Wales. Soon he became a symbol in the debate about the meaning of humanity, as was the rage during the Age of Enlightenment. Eventually, Peter's existence outlived the public's interest in him. He was sent to a farm in Herefordshire, east of London, where a family was paid for his support. He was well regarded there until he went missing in 1751, and a large-scale search was undertaken. When Peter was found and returned home, the family had a leather collar made for him with his name and the location of the farm to ensure his safety. Peter died in 1785, believed to be about 70 years of age. He never could speak, although he could reportedly say his own name and that of King George. Interesting, though quite lengthy story. One more before I turn it back over to Kevin. This one is an artistic drawing of Marie Angelique Mimi Leblanc. The tale of the wild girl of Champagne is considered by some to be wholly fictional. However, there are also historians like Serge Arolas who are able to point to archival historical evidence of the existence of Marie Angelique Mimi Leblanc. Deep in the French woodlands in the early 1700s, there was a young girl who lived in total isolation. One day, Marie Angelique, as she came to be known, appeared with a club in her hand in search of water near the town of Sangy in Champagne. Fearful villagers sent a guard dog after her, but Marie Angelique killed the canine with one fatal blow. She retreated to a tree and only came down for food and water that the villagers left for her. She spoke no French and only attempted to communicate by shrieking. Eventually, she was placed under the care of a shepherd and learned to speak French, indicating that she must have spoken some other language before turning feral. After many years, Marie Angelique began to remember what led to her wild existence. She claimed that she once lived in a warmer land, was captured, painted black to pass as a slave, placed on a boat. At some point, she escaped into the forest of France, where she survived on raw plants and animals. And there is the story of Marie Angelique. And now we go back to Mr. Kevin Kane.
All right, I'm continuing some of the top urban legends from each of the 50 states, not kind of the newest territories, but these are some interesting stories here. We are now in Michigan, up there in the north part of the country, in a place called Hell's Bridge. The Nain Rouge and Dogmen, they've got nothing on the tale of Elias Frisk, a deranged old preacher who, according to blood-curdling lore, Pied Pipered a group of tethered children into the woods near what is now Algoma Township. He slaughtered them one by one, casting them into Cedar Creek before being caught by their parents and hanged, but not before saying he was possessed by demons. In its current form, Hell's Bridge is a creaky, narrow metal footbridge in the middle of the woods, where those brave enough to cross at night claim to hear the voices and screams of children. and are sometimes lost my place there, and are sometimes greeted by a black figure with glowing eyes as they traverse it. There is no record of an Elias Frisk in the area, though there was a prominent Frisk family beginning in the 1910s. Still, despite the lack of hard facts, anyone who's visited the bridge will attest that there's something out there, and it usually makes its presence known as you're teetering on a shaky metal bridge in the moonlight. And now go over next door to Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, and the Hairy Man of Vergas Trail. What's not to be creeped out about? An 8-foot, musty-smelling, barefoot man with a reputation for being unnaturally aggressive is a heck of a thing to consider encountering in the woods. Some reported sightings were just that, sightings. However, reports like Ken Zitzau's made the Hairy Man more than an apparition, but something to fear. Zitzau returned from driving in the woods with dents all over his car and hood, and said the Hairy Man jumped onto the road and began pounding the hood of his car. Nobody really knows where it came from. Sightings trace back to the 60s and had a significant increase in the 70s, and still happen from time to time. Some say it's a legend. Some say there was an old hermit living in the woods who wasn't too keen on your rascally kids wandering his land. Others say the Hairy Man is real and point to a mysterious skull that was discovered in the Vergas Trail area that is human-like but not hominid. It was discovered by a private citizen who didn't turn it over, so no one knows if it's human, Bigfoot, animal, or just a hoax. And now we go down to the deep south again with Mississippi. Down there in MISSISSIPPI, they have a story, The Three-Legged Lady of Nash Road. Whenever a strange person starts chasing your car as you drive down a dark, unfamiliar road, it's unsettling. But when she bangs on your hood, it's even worse. And when she has 3 legs, and one seems to be a rotting limb that she sewed to her body, that's even worse. Probably the worst. But that's what generations of Mississippians have said about the stretch of Nash Road near Columbus where the lady does her thing. From Robert Johnson selling his soul to the Yazoo witch, many ghost stories in the Mississippi persist, but the three-legged lady gets points for changing to suit what scares you. Some say that extra leg was removed from a dead lover and attached to her body. Some believe she's the ghost of a mother who got lost searching for her dismembered daughter after all she could find was a severed leg. Some say she wants to race you across a nearby bridge. Either way, turn off your headlights on a stretch of the road and don't be surprised if you're forced to confront the specter yourself. That's a creepy vision right there, a 3-legged woman, and one of them is a rotting limb.
So that was Mississippi.
Yeah, Mississippi.
And what's the next state after Mississippi?
Missouri.
Missouri. Okay.
Missouri.
Well, I'm going to bring in Victor. Have you ever run across Victor before?
No, I have not.
Victor was a French boy, Victor of Evron. At the close of the 18th century, a young French boy was spotted living in the woods. The wild child was clearly fearful of people. After being brought by 3 hunters to a widow's house for care, the boy escaped, returning to the wilderness for about 3 years. Eventually, however, he emerged on his own, lacking language, preferring uncooked food, and covered in scars. It was obvious that he had been wild for most of his life. He was eventually trained like a dog, a chain, no, I have a train, okay, dog to a leash and taught to relieve himself outside. He was treated like an animal, geez. But he remained mute, shameless, and primarily interested in escaping. Probably felt like he was being in prison. The French government entrusted him to Roche Ambroise Sicard, director of the Institute for Deaf Mutes in Paris, who declared that he was totally unresponsible and intractable. Afterwards, a committee of experts headed by Philippe Pine, a founder of psychiatry, decided to send the boy to an asylum because he had been diagnosed as an incurable idiot. A physician named Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard finally took the boy, naming him Victor. Itard studied for 5 years. There was vast improvement in Victor's behavior and intelligence. Although the only words Victor ever learned were lait, which is milk, and Dieu, which is God, he did make great progress in learning empathy, one of the traits that Itard believed separated humans from other animals. And there is Victor. And let's see, one more before I turn back to you. Let's see what I'm going to go to now is interesting name right here. Casper, but it's not the Casper you're thinking. It's spelled K-A-S-P-A-R, K-A-S-P-A-R, Hauser, H-A-U-S-E-R. And here is his story. A disheveled teenager appeared from the woods with a letter addressed to Captain von Wessenig of Nuremberg, Germany in 1828. The author of the letter claimed the boy had mysteriously appeared as an infant in the year 1812 and that he had never allowed the boy to leave the house until the current year due to the boy's wish to become a soldier. The anonymous author invited von Wessenig to take him in or hang him. What a choice. The history boy's vocabulary was limited, but he was able to tell the captain that his name was Caspar Hauser. The captain took Caspar to the police, where he was placed under the care of the state, refusing to eat anything but bread and water. By 1832, Caspar found a job in a small law office and was under the care of a schoolmaster named Johann George Meyer. One day, Caspar and Johann had a bitter argument. 5 days later, Caspar came home with a serious stab wound to the chest, to which he succumbed and died. His tombstone read, "Here lies Caspar Hauser, riddle of his time, his birth unknown, his death mysterious, 1833. Some people, contemporaneously and today, believe that Hauser was likely a fraudster. It has been impossible to prove either way, as the man who supposedly kept Hauser confined to a small cell in his home was identified. We'll go back to Kevin before we go to Cambodia.
Oh. All right. On my side of things here, on our urban legends from the 50 states, we're in Missouri now, and Zombie Road. Ooh. The dark canopy trail running through Wildwood, Missouri, just outside St. Louis, has been a hotbed of creepy tales for ages, often revolving around shadowy human figures following and frightening those along the trail. Originally built as an access road for the gravel quarries along the Merrimack River, the road fell into disuse and disrepair in the 70s and saw an increase in teenagers flocking to the area to party and scare the crap out of each other. The origin stories of the trail's haunting varies widely from the kind that are plausible, railway accidents, executed Civil War spies, to the more sensational ones like sadistic children's hospitals. Several years ago, the pathway was paved so it might be used as a bike path, but that hasn't done much to slow the legend. The police are doing their best, however. All right, that was Zombie Road. Now we get to Montana, cowboy country up there in Montana. This story is The Hitchhiker of Black Horse Lake. Usually when you see a hitchhiker on a particularly desolate stretch of highway, which Highway 87 certainly can be, it gives you the willies. On this particular stretch near Great Falls, it's compounded by the fact that the namesake lake is seasonal and dry most seasons. Regardless, the end result of the body of a Native American man clad in jeans with jet black hair slamming into your windshield as you're driving is sheer terror. Legend has it those who encounter the hitcher suddenly find his body bouncing off the front of their car. When they stop to help, there's nothing there and no damage to the windshield. The hitcher, meanwhile, repeats the cycle endlessly, trapped in his own personal hell, as he repeats his moment of death with whichever driver happens to be cruising down the road at the wrong time. Folklorists have traced the whole vanishing hitchhiker phenomenon back to the 19th century, though given the presence of denim reported by most who encounter this hitcher, we're going to guess he met his demise in the 60s if he was indeed real. Legends of wandering spirits of Native Americans are pretty prevalent in this part of the country too, so chances are the hitcher lore and the native stuff just mated logically. All right, now to another countrified state. We have Nebraska, out there with the cornfields. Children of the Corn, Nebraska. Now, this story is actually called Seven Sisters Road. There's no shortage of creepy road where creepy things happen type stories, but Nebraska's Seven Sisters Road is particularly unsettling, with the legend telling of a young man who, following a dispute with his family, led each of his sisters out to 7 different hills and hung them from a different tree. The precise origins of the legend are unclear. Sometimes it's sometimes it's the father rather than the brother, depending on who's telling the story, but it goes back long enough and is ingrained well enough in the local culture that it's taken into account when making highway construction plans. Imagine the state having to make highway construction plans around an urban legend as to whether or not they do it.
All right. Are you caught up?
Yeah, next one will be Nevada, which we'll probably have to get the rest of these next week.
Okay. So I've got 3 more on my list of feral kids, and they're all relatively short.
Okay.
So let's go now to Cambodia and talk about this jungle girl, the Cambodian jungle. And this little girl's identity was a mystery when she was captured in the dense jungle of northeastern Cambodia in 2007, very recent. She was naked, caked with dirt, and covered with scars. The woman preferred to crawl rather than walk, and she spoke only 3 words: father, mother, stomachache. A nearby villager, Saryo, came forward to claim the woman was his daughter. Racho, I cannot forget it, who had vanished 18 years earlier when she was 8 years old. But reporters who visited the woman doubted that she had lived for 18 years in the jungle. Saryo did not agree to a DNA test. There were also some signs that the woman may have escaped from some kind of captivity or torture. Saryo died in 2013. 3 years later, a Vietnamese man came forward to say the woman was his daughter, who had disappeared in 2006, a year before she was discovered, after suffering a mental breakdown. His accepted, and the woman, whose real name was Tak, returned with him to Vietnam. She still does not speak. Her birth family reports that she has been mute since birth. These are really interesting stories of these kids, and I'm finding most of them really cannot explain their past. This girl you're looking at here is Jenny, and the story of Jenny is one of the saddest and best known tales of feral children. God, I hate to leave everybody on a sad note. The story of Jenny is one of the saddest and best known tales of feral children. Born in California in 1957, Jenny's father soon turned his back on the girl for her mental disabilities and decided to seclude her from the outside world. Starting when she was about 20 months old, Jenny was in a room where she was usually bound to a crib or strapped to the toilet. Her father prevented her mother and her siblings from interacting with Jenny and only rarely fed her. The father was physically abusive to all members of the family, even causing neurological damage to his wife, although Jenny would eventually be the one to take the brunt of his anger. When Jenny was 13, her mother was finally able to gather the strength to leave her husband. And after moving back into her parents' house, applied for disability benefits, bringing Jenny along with her. Social workers were immediately worried and became all the more so when they heard that Jenny was in fact 13, not the 6 or 7 years that she appeared. They immediately contacted the police, and Jenny was taken in as a ward of the court. Jenny knew nothing of language and walked with a strange gait, indicating her motor skills were severely impaired. Although her vision was physically intact, she was unable to focus on anything further than 3 feet away. She was transferred from state doctor to state doctor in an attempt to study her condition and hopefully socialize her. The repeated transfers caused so much stress that she soon lost what little ability to speak she had possessed when first entering the system. Her father committed suicide soon after the discovery, and when Jenny turned 18, her mother cut off all scientists from contacting the family. Updates on Jenny's life are sporadic, but in 2008, ABC News reported that Jenny was in the care of the state at a psychiatric hospital, still completely speechless. How freaking sad that story is. This one is the Russian bird boy, and this is the last of my feral. No, it's almost the last. There's one more after this one. In 2008, Russian social services rescued a boy who had been raised as a pet bird by his own mother. Okay. I'm sorry. Tweet, tweet. Okay, raised as a pet bird. That is strange. I mean, how do you raise your child as a pet bird? Okay, his bedroom was a small room and birds with bird food and excrement strewn across the floor. His only method of communication, I got it, chirping like the feathered friends that surrounded him. So he did go tweet, tweet. The boy was often said to suffer from Mowgli syndrome, a non-scientific description often used in place of the term feral child, equally associated with lack of socialization, and communication. His mother never let him without food, but refused to speak to him. Reportedly, the boy learned how to chirp to communicate with the creatures that he did interact with, the he shared space with. The young boy did attempt to communicate with humans via chirping, once extricated from his small avian world. Some reports claim that when the boy believed his chirps were being ignored, he flayed his arms like wings. He has since come into the custody of the state. He temporarily lived in an asylum before being transferred to the Center for Psychological Care. And then I've got one more. Where is this one's? Do I not have her picture? Well, I guess not. I thought I did, but we're going to cover her anyway. It's Marina Chapman, and she's got kind of a plain face, so that's cool. Born in Colombia, Marina Chapman asserts that her early childhood was spent completely alone in the jungle, save for the group of capuchin monkeys who watched over her. She also claims that at about 4 years of age, she was taken from her small village in Colombia and released into the wild, where a group of capuchin monkeys took her in. She claims to have spent several years living with a troop of primates until she encountered a group of hunters. The hunters promptly sold her to a brothel in the city of Cucuta, where she eventually became a slave to the mafia. Marina eventually broke free from her captors and made it to Bradford, England, where she married a scientist and gave birth to 2 children. She tells her wild story in the autobiography, The Girl with No Name. The truth behind her story is unclear. One psychologist believes that while Chapman may deeply and truly believe her own story, it could still be untrue. But at least I ended that on a little bit higher note. She was able to have some normalcy of life there and actually wrote a book about it. So I'm glad that I went that way. You got a short story for this 4 minutes, or?
I can tell a little short though, Nevada.
Okay.
Area 51 in Nevada. But we all are familiar with that.
At least those of us.
Never heard of Area 51.
Never heard of that. Well, you've been under a rock, ain't you?
Okay, what was a year ago? We're going to storm Area 51?
Yeah.
That was a big deal. And just part of the many bits of lore that are in that place. Area 51 lore has been satirized, remixed, and riffed on so much in popular culture. Sometimes it's hard to remember just how creepy this whole deal was and is in the first place. But secret government cover-ups, dead aliens, and playing God in the middle of the desolate Nevada desert is creepier than probing Randy Quaid in Independence Day. It's been said that everything from time travel, genetic experiments, and alien autopsies are commonplace at Area 51. Frankly, no one outside of high government knows what goes on in there. First off, Area 51 is a real highly classified military base in the southern portion of Nevada. Its purpose is publicly unknown, but in the early 1950s and the infant stages of the Cold War, President Eisenhower approved plans to build the U-2 stealth plane and created Area 51 to house the development lab and test field. When reports of the admittedly spacecraft-looking plane floated through the public and media, theories spread, and the conjecture around Roswell's alien crash site only fanned the flames of speculation. From there, it's been the epicenter for all U.S. government suspicions. Even to this day, Area 51 is a big, popular bit of lore in the urban legends of the United States. So I guess the rest of you can pick up next week because we've gotten halfway through the alphabet.
Next week it would start with New Hampshire and go from there.
How many more states we got?
Well, we're from New Hampshire. I have to count them all. New Hampshire all the way, all the way down to, what's the last one? Vermont, Virginia, Washington, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming.
Yeah. Texas. Yeah. All right, we got a minute here, and there's a book that we've never talked about this book before, have we?
Golly gee, I don't guess we have we? Except maybe a few zillion times.
Blood painting, and that painting is in Kevin's home, and the book is a good book. I vouch for that. And if you order it directly from Mr. Kane, he will personally offer for you and make sure it's delivered to you promptly. And visit him at myhaunteddogs.com. And he does a lot of YouTube stuff. He does a lot of EVP and spirit box work with his collection of some 300 to 400 haunted items that he has in his house. And it's very entertaining. He's a good storyteller. So keep that in mind. Now, my book, Dating the Dead. That cover is wrong. I keep saying that. I couldn't find the recent cover I did for the new book. And the new title for the bigger book is Dating the Dead and Spectrophilia. If you don't know what spectrophilia is, that means you need to buy a book. And it's found, the easiest place is go to datingthedead.com. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so at Abnormal Alabama on YouTube. I'm not promoting Kevin's channel because he's got over 1,000 now. Join our group on Facebook, Abnormal Alabama. We post constantly weird, strange, and quirky stuff. And Kevin even posts his videos that he does of his EVPs and whatnot there. So it's a good central point together. It is now 9:01, and I enjoyed having everybody. I thank Meg Griffin, who has now joined us and enjoyed it. She is from Louisiana, and she's going to go back and listen to your Louisiana stories.
Oh, okay.
Later, she said. So thank you. And any last words?
MyHauntedDolls.com. MyHauntedDolls.com. Go buy
And keep
your
in
book.
mind, folks, when this virus settles down and things open back up, which I really kind of doubt it's going to happen this year. It don't look too promising at the moment. But when it does open up, you can find us at different conventions and cosplay places, just interesting places like that, where we will have a booth and a table set up to where you can not only buy our books, talk to us, and even take a selfie with us. So keep that in mind, and we'll keep that up to date on our websites as to what events we'll be going to. But I don't know, things are not looking too good this year. It don't seem to be getting any better, unfortunately. Hang in there, folks. Be safe. Peace, love.
Mhm.
Have a good night.
Yeah.
All right. You still got a lot of states to go.
Yeah.
Okay, I hit the wrong button.